All right, well, welcome to the next episode of I Take That Personal Podcast. My name's John Soricelli, and today I have a good friend of mine, Brandy Zamora, with me. I am super excited to have Brandy here with me today, because honestly, you're a boss lady. I think you're friggin' fantastic.
Thank you.
I love so many aspects of your personality, and I don't know where today's going to go. So that's going to be the fun stuff. I don't know what we're going to talk about, but you're going to enjoy it. But before I get into that, today's episode is brought to us by J&J Coastal Lending. They're our sponsor today. You'll hear a little bit more from them a little bit later on in our episode. What up, girl?
Wow, you're profesh.
Shit, man, right?
There's a sponsor and everything.
We're trying, dude.
I'm scared of you.
We're soliciting new sponsors, by the way. So anyone that wants to sponsor,
right,
holla at your boy, dog. But no, and I mean that sincerely when I say, like, you know, we've really gotten to know each other over the last probably 3 or 4 years. Mm-hmm. And I just think there's so many layers of you that's fantastic.
Thank you.
And I'm super excited for us to be chatting here today. So I guess the first thing we should probably talk about a little bit is like kind of how we know each other,
okay.
right? So you are a home warranty, right?
Correct.
And I think most people don't even know what a home warranty is.
They don't.
And let's just talk a little bit about what you do in your professional career.
Okay.
And kind of go from there.
Right. Most people don't know what a home warranty is. And the ones that think they do, they're the worst because they are out there spreading lies and untruths all day, every day. So a real basic definition of a home warranty is it covers systems and appliances found within the main foundation of the home. It offsets costs like your air conditioning system, your plumbing system, something that could cost you $5,000 with a service call fee with home warranty. It's like $85. The misconception behind it is that it covers everything or that it's home insurance. And those are two totally different things. What I do is my clients are realtors and real estate offices, and I go from office to office all day. Sometimes it feels like I'm a caterer and, you know, to solicit business, to support them. That's the sales aspect of my job. But with most, what we're called our affiliates and vendors for the people out there that don't know. And most people, their job stops when the transaction stops after escrow closes. I'm one of the ones that stick around.
It actually just begins.
It just begins for me.
Yeah.
That's the whole other aspect of what I'm doing. So I'm doing what all the other affiliates are doing out in the field, going to office meetings, going to real estate events. But then I have the other aspect of my job of servicing claims when there's issues with claims. And that's helping the homeowner and my agent that represents the homeowner. So it's a lot of stuff.
So one of the things that I've come to enjoy is when you tell me your home warranty, true home warranty stories. Come on, dude. Like, first off, maybe that's going to be a whole nother podcast.
Right.
True home warranty stories. Give me one. I know I didn't prep you for it, but you have so many of them. So give me something.
I think one of my favorite two, my first one would be is we cover systems and appliances that break down to normal wear and tear. So you have to be using that system and it just breaks down because you've used it too much or whatever. We had an incident one time where a husband and wife had a dispute, a domestic dispute, and he kicked the water heater off the foundation. I don't know how he did that, if he's Incredible Hulk or what, but he kicked it off and they righteously called in a claim for coverage for that. And they didn't even try to finesse it. They said, my husband kicked the water heater off the foundation. We need a new water heater. First of all, we're going to tip to repair our systems before we replace them, but that would not be considered normal wear and tear. That
Maybe in their relationship it was normal wear and tear.
Right. Somebody else didn't get hurt, but that would be considered domestic dispute. Domestic disputes are not covered under home warranty.
Or funny.
No, exactly. My other favorite one that sticks out is when the floods happened in Montecito.
Okay.
And that there's nothing funny about the floods happening, but homeowner called in and said they saw the refrigerator like flowing down the debris of the street and asked if that was covered. That wouldn't be covered by your insurance or your home warranty. That is an act of God, so that's not covered in there. But yeah, we got a lot of them. We have a lot of audacity.
That's it. And a home warranty is something that needs to be, or that's part of. I guess from my perspective, I'm just going to talk a little bit about home warranty right now, right? So, and tell me where I'm wrong here. But home warranty, you can buy it when you own the home, right? You don't have to, you can buy it at any point in time that you want it.
Yeah, you have to be in escrow, but traditionally people are.
But traditionally on a purchase that's taking place when somebody buys a new home, right? It's part of a new transaction. Someone buys a new home and they, oftentimes it's paid for by the selling party.
Correct.
And it's relatively inexpensive. It's a couple $100, $500, $600, $700.
Right.
Covers thousands and thousands of dollars worth of stuff in the house for at least the first year. Something could break down, shortly thereafter ownership that had normal wear and tear from the sale. their dishwasher, their appliances, their whatever, and you're going to have a service call, have someone come out, service the try to fix it for inexpensive $75 service fee.
Right.
And if they can't fix it, they replace it. And I don't know how you guys stay in business.
I don't know how we do either. We pay out a lot of money in claims. People have the misconception that we don't cover anything. That's not the case at all. We cover a lot. We have to always have a certain amount of money in reserves all the time to cover our claims. And at least for me, I want to cover my homeowners' claims. I'm not trying to get out of anything, but there's stuff that's simply not covered and people don't understand that. But how I always break it down is your car insurance or your home insurance, you pay about $1,000 a year for that, and you pay for that. I always get when people call in, they go, yeah, what am I paying for this home warranty for? And I think in the back of my mind,
you didn't pay shit. The seller paid for this fucking thing. Why are you bitching?
That's why when it's time to renew it, all of a sudden you don't need it anymore, right? So one $3,000 plumbing claim pays for the home warranty itself. That's average about $550. Whereas home insurance, car insurance, you pay that $1,000 every year, and you don't want to get to a car accident, or your house burned down or anything. But it's just saying there's value in it all day, every day. So it's changing your mindset of how it works.
How did you get into home warranty?
Well, I got into the real estate industry young. I grew up in this industry. My best friend that I practically lived with my whole life, she was a big title rep in the Palisades, Malibu area and stuff. And I used to go around with her and put all her tchotchkes and stuff and go to office. And I always worked kind of in insurance or finance my whole career. And then about halfway through, I want to say in my mid-20s, I hit up my best friend's mom and said, hey, do you got anything? I was working in dental insurance at the time, which was boring me out of my mind. And even though I'm like kind of a wild child, I've always like straight edge corporate kind of settings and jobs. Maybe it's a sense of security or something. I don't know. But she brought me into the title industry in about 2006.
Okay. And
I stayed for a while, and then the market crashed. And so I left for 4 years, did some other things, got into the tax consulting business and stuff like that for like R&D.
Tax credits.
Right. And so then the 2012 things started coming around, and I got recruited to come into home warranty, and I was like, hey, that's kind of a way back into title, and then I just ended up staying 10 years later,
10 years later, I've been kicking ass, taking names.
Exactly.
I
made the decision for most of my career, I was making money for other people, and I'm not talking about like the big corporation. I'm talking about on another top producing team or something, doing all the work, doing all the stuff. And my husband one day told me, he's like, you work like your name's on the side of the building, and it's hard for me not to work like my name's on the side of the building. I have that kind of work ethic, but when I started making money for myself, had my own territory, I was the rep, it was a game changer for me. And I excelled. And I always felt like people didn't quite see my potential or underestimated me. And I love being underestimated. It's motivation. And, I always knew like if I was on my own, and I always felt like they kind of kept me in a box because it was benefit to them. Yeah. So once I started doing it on my own, it's like...
That's it. Taking over the world.
Right.
Well, no, and I mean that sincerely. Like, first off, social media gives us the ability to see different things. But, the only word that comes to my mind is envious. I'm envious of seeing how frequently you are in different offices with different people, doing different things, having a great relationship with that perspective.
Right.
So the only word I can come up with is envious, because I think it's fantastic. I think it's motivational. I think it's honorable. A lot of people, especially in outside sales jobs, they ain't hustling, and you're always doing your thing. And listen, your path winds, just like everyone else's path winds. We have ups and downs.
Right.
Right. We have good times, we have bad times, we have health, we have family, we have all different things.
Yeah.
Which actually brings me into a different conversation. Like, your background is super unique. Right. And I mean that personally, right? Your personal background is super unique. And honestly, we haven't really talked about a lot of this stuff, so fuck it. Talk about it on camera.
Right in front of Joaquin.
Right? Like, that's it. Hey, bud. Gonna have to snap in a shot of you in the background there. There we go. Right? Joaquin and the rest of the world out on the internet.
Right.
No, but like, so correct me if I'm wrong, foster care.
Well, somewhat. I should have been in foster care, but I was luckily that I had a lot of parents who took me in instead, and
what age was that?
God, when I started like really living with friends, I was about 11 years old, and when I was really like kind of technically on my own, I was 13. So I always lived with my best friend's mom that I told you about. That best friend has since passed away, but I always lived with her. My other friend Jessica's mom, and just they all were kind of a tribe that like took me in.
How did you end up there?
So my biological dad.
And you can say pause. I ain't talking about something.
No.
If I go somewhere else, just drop me with a pause.
Should I start it there or should I take it back? Okay.
I want to know. Let's talk.
So my biological father, if you've ever seen the movie, the best way to describe him, have you ever seen the movie Catch Me If You Can with Leonardo DiCaprio? That was my dad. And I use the word dad loosely because I really don't refer to him as my father, and I'll explain why. But my biological dad was just one of those con artists, you know, and it's one of those people, you hear this a lot about people that are like kind of criminals or con artists. Like if they had channeled that energy, amazing what they could
take over the world. Yeah.
And I will credit a lot of my success and personality comes straight from him. You know what I mean? And he, you know, for a lot of my life, I thought he was a lawyer, but he was never a lawyer, right? I think he was the county coroner when I was born. I don't know how he got those credentials, you know. He was a paramedic at one time. He's had like all these different trades. So we would go from living in, him and my mother divorced really early. My mom has always been like a kick-ass emergency professional. And in her defense, though, I think she was in her early 20s when she had us. And my dad made it very difficult for her to keep us. So it wasn't that she wanted to abandon us or anything, but like when they got divorced when I was 3 years old, and I'm sorry, I'm kind of jumping around here. And my sister was 18 months old, and my dad made it very difficult for her to keep a job and to keep us. My mom is also African American. My dad's not. And, you know, you can imagine in the early 80s and stuff.
What's your dad?
My dad is Italian Jew.
Okay.
And you can imagine in the early 80s and stuff that
mixed racial relationship.
You're right. You know, my mom would call the police because he was abusive and whatnot too. My mom would call the police and he would lie and say these weren't her kids. You know, she had these two little Mexican looking babies, you know, and they didn't believe.
That's so fucking
right.
crazy.
They were her children. And when he would call her job and say she was a drug addict and just all these things, you know, and my dad was a starving musician at one point. I believe he played the drums, and these are true stories. He played the drums with Elvis at one point. He was the original drummer for the Casey and the Sunshine Band. Like he, I think even now he tours with like the Iron Butterfly band and all that stuff. He's a, if you take him at face value, he's probably a pretty and amazing character and stuff. And I know I'm the child that he kind of like revered, but has been out of his life the longest, you know, and he had another son before me and all this stuff, but he made it very difficult for my mom to keep us. And so she kind of had to give up. There was no other choice. You know, she couldn't keep a job. He would get her fired from her jobs and all that stuff. So we went with my dad, and I have to say my mom's a boss-ass bitch, though. My mom is in the early 80s, working in the emergency room, paying child support, like for two little girls. There's not a lot of women that could say they were doing that. And my stepmom that he met very quickly after, she was a boss bitch, too. Like, I've always been around working women. And I think it's so important to bring your daughters with you to work and stuff, you know? And, but my stepmom had a major drinking problem, which I found out later years that was the coping mechanism to deal with my dad.
With him,
you know, so I gave her a lot of shit about that, not kind of understanding the root of the problem. But it was just a very chaotic household. It was sexually, physically, and a mentally abusive household. And my dad was, we would go from, we never lived anywhere. I never lived for anywhere for 1 year until I was 19 years old, and it was my first apartment. And, you know, and there was, you know, times my dad and my mom really did try to get us, like, they would kidnap us back and forth all the time. And I have early childhood memories of being somewhere in San Jose in a room eating soup and
in
nobody's
a hotel
around.
somewhere.
I don't know. It's some weird guy was sleeping on the bed. I didn't know what was going on. And my mom, one of those times when she had escaped and ran away from my dad, and I think we were going on our way to a battered women's shelter, she took me out of the car and I like wouldn't stand up. And she thought I was, you know, being an asshole because I was one of those asshole kids, and couldn't get me to stand up. Well, it turned out I had carbon monoxide poisoning and I had almost died from it. She had this like shitty car and they had to take me to the emergency room. I was like technically dead for like 3 minutes and I was barely 3 years old, you know? And so I think after that, you know, it was just very defeating for her, you know? And to this day, the relationship with my parents were very into, you hear it's a word everybody uses now, like parentification, like we were in charge of taking care of the other kids as little kids, so I always thought my sister was my responsibility, even though she was 2 years younger than me. I can remember my mom telling me at a young age. And, I used to put a lot of shit off on my dad too, but my mom, you're not innocent when you link up with a crazy person too. But I remember one of my earliest childhood memories of my mom telling me, like, look, I had your sister, so, because I'm afraid me and your dad are going to kill each other and I don't want you to be in this world alone. Christ. So imagine hearing that as a 3-year-old. And it really wasn't until like a couple years ago that I did not feel responsible for my sister and every fucked up decision and every drama that she hasn't made. Like, she wasn't my own child.
Like you fucked that up. Yeah.
So we went from motel to apartment to regular house to mansion all the time. Like every 6 months we moved. And it was, I always say this too, all the resentments I had growing up are all things I'm grateful for now. And what it really did teach me is how quickly money can go and how quickly you can get it back. You know what I mean? And how working hard consistently, you get money. And so we would have my dad always lived in Calabasas, Agora Hills, Thousand Oaks, places that you hear about now on TV and stuff. And my mom always lived in Venice and Inglewood, but she always had the regular job career, and she accelerated in her career. She became very famous in her, emergency field and whatnot. But I would go from those two different dichotomies all the time. And it taught me like a lot of lessons. And so I don't mean to sound so dramatic. And sometimes when I tell these stories, I forget how traumatizing they are, because you have to kind of separate yourself from them. But to answer your question of how it all came about, me starting to live with friends and stuff, was that there was a few times I would go like on a snowboarding trip or something with like friends, and I would come back and my family had just moved. Not like, hey, we're moving.
Like you don't even know where they are.
No, know where they are. Not, hey, we're moving. They're leaving a note. Hey, this is where we moved.
Like they just go to bring you home, and they're not there.
Nobody was there.
That's fucking wild.
And they would.
I smile when I get nervous. Just so you know, I am not smiling about this. I smile when it's like I'm awkward. Like
whenever I tell that story, I always forget,
continue.
And then I always feel like it's so far out that it's not true. But then like one of my friends' moms or like my friends, they go, oh yeah, that shit was true. Like that really happened. I was there. And that's when like,
and this is no cell phones. This is no pagers.
No.
It's like, how the fuck did you even find your family?
My friends would be like, you're coming home with us. And then about a week later, they'd show up to my friend's house, my friend's parents' house, and say, where the hell have you been? I'm like, where the hell have I been?
You're not
I've been homeless, motherfucker.
You're not at the house anymore, dog. Like, where have I been?
What are you talking about? And that's, it's a big word now, but that was like the ultimate gaslighting to a child, and just never feeling safe. And that's why everyone always says, God, you're such a traditional, like structured mom and all that stuff. It's because that's what makes me feel safe. I like that shit,
So, yeah, I mean, so fuck. First off, thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
I mean, seriously, it's it's a personal, and hey, I take that personal, right?
Right.
So I guess from that perspective, how do you feel like that's, and you started to go there, but how has it impacted you today?
Well, it's made me really strong. It's made me also say, there's a saying, there's no big deals today. I'm very good at putting into perspective, what's a big deal and what's not, even in my career. I remember working for the tiny home warranty company and how hard it was to get into offices and stuff. So when I hear some of my counterparts that have worked at Fidelity with the big name all these years, complain about stuff, I'm like, dog, you don't know what it's really like out there, So I think it's done that. What I have noticed in recent years, though, is because I'm such a strong person and I exude strength, people always assume that I don't need the warm and fuzzy and the love and how sensitive I am. And I think that's a thing with Aquariuses anyways, And so I've had to learn how to be very specific, like, yeah, I'm strong, I'm getting through this, but I need you. Fucking come and talk to me, call me, see how I'm doing, But it's, it just puts things into perspective easier for me, And also when I feel something in my gut, like I go with that and I'm not crazy, because I was told for so many years that I was. And it's also the biggest thing it's ever taught to me, just because somebody has the title of mom, brother, father, any of that shit, that doesn't mean you have to accept toxic behavior or abuse from anyone. There's a good meme that says, let's start normalizing getting away from saying, well, that's your mom, that's your dad. Who gives a shit, And so even with my mom, we have a relationship today, but I have, strong boundaries with that too. I love her. But my mom is better at acknowledging her shortcomings and things maybe she didn't do as well,
It's so crazy. And, I don't have the same upbringing that you have, right? I have technically the exact fucking opposite.
Wow.
Right? Like, if I'm going to be fair, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm, middle America, or not middle America, middle class.
Come on, New York's not middle America.
No, New York ain't middle America.
Yeah.
Middle class, right? Middle class, 2 parents, 2 kids, house, dad that works, mom that stays home, like all that type of stuff. And, my mom passed away. I think you know this, but my mom passed away in 2002.
Yeah.
So, we're talking now 21 years, right? I mean, we're getting on to almost more
than half your life.
And I remember, it's so crazy because as we're just talking about this stuff, right? Which is why I said I don't know what we're going to talk about. We're just gonna talk. So I remember when she passed away, I was 23 years old.
Right.
And I had just started in this career, frankly. I had gotten my job doing mortgages in a capacity in February 1st, 2001.
Wow, right about your birthday.
Exactly. My birthday is February 2nd.
Yeah.
And then my mom turned 50 February 15th.
Wow.
And she passed away February 19th. So she passed away 4 days after her 50th birthday.
Jeez.
And, layers of stuff that I probably need to unpack in therapy better. But
isn't that crazy though when we're like right around the corner for 50, even though I don't like saying that out loud?
No shit.
Like,
no shit.
That's probably
I
a lot.
I realize 50 is a lot younger than I thought it was. But in any event, I remember when she passed away, the first thing that came to my mind is I'm now one of those kids.
Right.
Because now it's like, we've had our issues, but that was the first thing that came to my mind. And I don't even know why I went into that. Oh, because of talking about me asking you, how do I feel like you were impacted by your upbringing? So when I started having kids, or me and my wife started having kids, stuff like that, I remember having this deep yearning to talk to my mom and understand the little things that happen when we were kids so I can recreate them for my children.
Right.
Because I'm like, okay, I didn't get fucked up in drugs. I mean, a little bit experiment here and there, but I didn't get fucked up in drugs. I didn't get fucked up in alcohol. I did, I had my little errors, but yet I always had this guiding light of like this morality of what was right. How'd I get that? Right? Like, where'd that come from? I want to make sure I give my kids that.
Right.
What did you do, mom and dad? Right?
Don't you think that comes from her passing though, and like having to step up and?
No, because I was older. I was 23.
Right.
I was 23. Now I'm already past. Listen. Yes, I'm already past the 15-year-old.
Right.
Getting doing drugs in high school. I'm past that, right? I'm 23. I'm an adult. I'm an adult from all that perspective. Right. So I already made it. Now, yes, there were things in the latter part of my life that I can identify as from her passing.
Right.
But, even stuff as a kid, like, I love my kids to death, but sometimes they're little assholes, right?
Yeah.
Personality traits, these different things.
Most kids are assholes. People are just so pussy to say it, but they are.
I mean, it's fine. Like,
that's why I'm like fine with doing my time away from my kids. It's okay. You deserve that. But anyway,
so I'm like, so my point, but I'll take my asshole kids any day.
Oh yeah.
Right. You know what I mean? So, I'm sure everyone says the same thing, right? But anyways, to come back to it, it's the little things about like, was I like that when I was a kid?
Right.
Did I do that when I was a kid?
Probably.
And like my father's alive. He's 72 years old now. And I'm not trying to talk shit on my father on fucking YouTube or whatever else this is. But like, I don't trust him telling me what happened.
Right.
I just don't.
Dad's like, paid attention.
He's had enough fucking stories where he said shit and that wasn't how it happened.
Right.
And I'm just like, I'm not even going to bother asking you anymore.
Right.
I'm going to stay away from that shit. So it's like, I don't know that. So I have this, yearning to understand that. So, And I guess part of that is because I'm proud of where I am and who I am.
Right.
And how I am. And I want to give my kids those same opportunities and like create these little like, and instead I'm probably just fucking them up. Yeah, I'm just probably.
Listen, I doubt that, but you bring up a good point I remember one time somebody told me, because I remember I was like, oh, I didn't have a relationship with my mom. It was my sister-in-law after her mother passed. And I was very close with my mother-in-law, like my best friend in the world. I've always been an old soul, and some of my best friends are 10, 20 years older than me. But I remember somebody telling, like, she said something, because I had said something kind of like, talking shit about my mom. And she's like, well, it's your mom. And then I was saying to someone, I was like, it doesn't matter, it's your mom. They did that. They're like, yeah, but their mom just passed away. So just because you had a different experience, don't underestimate what that means to lose a mother. And I've also, like, when my daughter has misconstrued something, or her perception of her childhood is different than what I felt I was doing and providing, that hurt me to my fucking core. Like sometimes when she thought that she perceived something different than what I perceive it as what it was, that gave me a lot of pullback on my mom and what she had to go through and the decisions she had to make, and then other people like you that have lost their mother early, like where would I have been if I didn't have her either, so. I'm
so fucked up. My wife will say it all the time. Like I'm desensitized inside a bit, like dead inside in a lot of regards. And that's like, it's fucked up. I'm just saying this shit. It's on camera. Right. It is what it is. But like, someone's parent that dies at 60, at 50, and you're like 40 years old, and you're 50 years old, you're 40 years old, you're 30 years old, and your mom or dad died, and they're like 50, 60, 70, and you're like the end of the fucking world. I'm like, listen. The fuck are you doing? You shouldn't have a parent still. Right. Like, you're a grown-ass motherfucking adult.
Right. No, you had a good life with them.
And like, oh, did they hit a car? Were they sick? Was it traumatic? Right? Like, if it's that traumatic thing, it's one thing. But that comes from, I'm sure, me being 23 and losing my mom and being like, yo, you still got your parent and you're an adult. Right?
It's 100% from that. I remember my husband's now lost both of his parents, but my husband's older than me, you know? And so I was kind of the same thing. They were in their late 70s. That's a great life you got to enjoy with them.
And I'm not saying you're not upset. I'm not saying you don't mourn them, but it's like, cool, I'll see you at work one day. Like, you know what I mean?
It is a selfish thing, because it's really coming from a place of you just want them to live forever, right? It's
like,
not so much that,
like, homegirl was fucking 80, dog. You're 60. Your mom died. Like, I'll take a day. I'll see you on Monday.
Right.
And I'm not saying I had that issue, but you get my point.
No.
That's my fucked up nature in my head.
I see where people come from that. When my dad passed away a couple years ago, my adopted dad.
But was it a couple years ago?
It was just a couple years ago.
I remember seeing
you know what? It wasn't a couple years ago. It feels like that. It was a little over a year ago.
That's what I was going to say. It was like a year ago.
This September would have been that anniversary. So, and yeah, it's the start of the year. I'm saying that because a memory from 2 years ago came up in my Facebook that I posted yesterday. What I had to reconcile with was, first of all, he was the first person that I did not lose in a traumatic way. Most of the people that have died have been really super sick, a drug overdose, something crazy. And he said to me right before he passed, he said, Mija, I'm just sticking around for you guys. I'm just doing this chemotherapy shit for you guys. And when he said that, I was like, he's almost 80 years old. My dad was a recovering addict. He died with like 36 years clean. It was more of...
And this isn't your biological dad.
This is not my biological dad.
Right, correct. I'm just clarifying for the listeners what you're saying, yeah.
And I should probably lean into that story, how he became my dad. But
let's do this. We're going to take a quick little break.
Yeah.
We're going to hear a quick word from our advertiser, J&J Coastal Landing, and we're going to come back and hear the story.
All right. Sounds good.
Today's episode is brought to us by J&J Coastal Lending. J&J is an independent mortgage broker with a network of over 70 different investors offering hundreds of loan programs. Whether your personal loan needs are simple or complicated, if you need a $200,000 loan or a $2 million loan, J&J will find the best loan program and rate. FHA, VA, conventional, jumbo, or a first-time homebuyer in need of down payment assistance. Regular income docs or outside the box, no documentation loan options. J&J has a solution to meet your unique needs. Visit www.thinkjnj.com for a no-cost, no-commitment evaluation. And when you're there, mention this podcast and J&J will give you $1,000 in lender credits on your next home loan. All right, so we're back now, and I sound like I have a little too much energy because we're actually talking about how your stepdad became your dad.
Yeah.
Like, tell me about that.
This does feel like there's a dick in your face. If we're keeping this,
are you
really
talking
real.
about me?
Right.
Are you calling me a dick over here?
Right, the
what the
microphone.
fuck?
Anyway, sorry. Well, my dad, who is my adopted dad, what I was saying about his passing was, I really had to accept that my mourning of him was really a selfish mourning. I just wanted him for me, you know? So it's kind of what you were saying, you know? Like, he had a great life, a life he would have never dreamed. Well, when I was young, I started doing drugs at a relatively young age, like 12 years old and stuff, and I can't believe I'm sharing this on the internet, but, but I became a full, you know, we're in Huntington Beach, and this is an issue, so maybe this will help people, but I'm used to it being an anonymous program, but I started, by the time I was 14, I was, you know, heavy into heroin and cocaine and like hard drugs. And, you know, prior to that, I was like a track star. I did ballet and dance. And I always say this, I can always correlate when shit really went downhill is when I stopped doing sports, stopped dancing. And I think that's why sports and things like that are so important for young girls, you know? So, and through a lot of work, you know, we could say my fucked up childhood was the result of using drugs, but it was really just a factor. And they tell you real quick early on in rehab and stuff that drugs are just a symptom of the problem. So, you know, I could have run a long time on, I had a fucked up family, and I could have done drugs for the rest of my life, right? But, you know, going to rehab and going to other places, you see people that had, like you said, the idyllic childhood and stuff that became drug addicts and had those things that were going on. You know, I had a high school boyfriend that, you know, we both were doing it together. And, you know, and it's funny because my mom, I said, lived in Venice Beach in Inglewood. And out there with my friends out there, the black side of my family, I never seen drugs in my entire life. I was introduced to heroin and cocaine from the rich kids in Agora Hills, California. You know what I mean? We used to actually drive to Venice Beach in Inglewood, where I, for years, grew up, you know, right down the street from my mom's house to get the drugs. So I had no idea that even existed there till I went there with my other friends. And somebody told me about Huntington Beach High was like known as heroin high and all this stuff.
I remember hearing that, yeah.
And I was like, really? But then I was like, no, that's like how Agora and Calabasas are, you know? And so I got introduced to it there, and it was...
I'm gonna jump in here real quick, and who knows if we get to some of all the stuff that we were wanting to talk about, but this is me being a selfish dad right now.
Right.
Like, okay, you're talking about the traumatic stuff from your childhood. Right. And you've done a lot of work, been through therapies, did a fourth step, did all these things, right? You stop doing sports, you're with the boyfriend, that gets you into drugs.
Yeah.
Can you, like, better identify for me that sequence of events that I could try to teach my children to not fall into? And that's, like, the thing that, like, I wish I can learn. Like, why did I hang out around a bunch of kids doing fucking drugs and not? Like, that's the honest truth. Like, why did was I still accepted with them?
Right.
And why was I able to be like, nah, I'm fucking good, and not get beat up or pressured into it, and still hang out with them, and then not really do it?
Because your family. I mean,
So, like, do you know what the thing was that tipped you?
The quick answer to that is, right now, is that you're already doing it. You're already keeping your daughters off the streets,
they're fucking
right?
10, dog.
Right. You're already doing that because you're present, you're involved, their mother's involved. If you see,
my wife's everything.
I think what was detrimental is like losing a mother at 3 years old, you know, and trying to find my way in the world, and just having parents that just really didn't give a fuck, that didn't ask if I had.
So
my
then, when it was
done,
like presented to you, you just were like, no accountability.
Exactly. I was looking for love in all the wrong places and stuff. You know, I was just vulnerable to that. And then listen, my friends that I did it with that I thought had perfect households, they really didn't. You know, that one friend the one mom that took care of me, her daughter died of a drug overdose at 33 years old, you know, and I tried to save her my whole life. And I thought she had this better life than I did, but she really didn't. She had these other things too. And so I think just being present as a parent, asking, hey, what are you doing? What's going on? That's how you prevent it. And so, yeah, I said, like, yeah, I know other people that had idyllic childhoods and stuff, but what is an idyllic childhood? And what's, you know?
And I was saying, like, I don't think you realize how you did as a parent growing up. Or let me rephrase. I don't think a parent raising a kid knows how they did as a parent raising that child until that child has their own kids. And, like, that to me was, like, a real, when I started to have my own kids, recognizing, because that's when all these things came flooding back,
right? About
like who and like really like who I wanted to be and how. And listen, I am fucked up as a dad. I know I am. Like, I don't do everything right, but I'm better than a lot, right? You know,
Right. I think you're better than you think.
You know, like there's and you know, I have a reminder on my phone now that goes off.
You talk about your daughters all the time. There's
Oh,
not
I
a lot
love
of
the
dads
hell out
that
of
do
them.
that.
Like I go
you
home.
have to like pry men sometimes. Oh, do you have a
No.
kid? Do you have a like? You are all.
I
You're
love
very
it.
present.
I love
Yeah.
it. I love it. I go to all their. I mean, I try to be involved with
Yeah.
everything I can. I leave work because I want to go home and hang out with them.
Right.
But when I go home, like, am I always the kindest, most supportive? What? No. Like a lot of it is I have a hard time with. Now this is becoming a parenting therapy session. But
Parenting
I have
podcast.
I have a hard time a lot with the I told you to do something and you don't do it.
Right.
Right, like that just is what it is.
Right.
And then that spins into me just being who I am, and sometimes I curse, and sometimes I yell, and sometimes I do these different things, right? But you know, I love the hell out of them. I run in the house.
You're
they hug
showing
me.
them you're being a human. I think
Yeah.
it's good to see that.
And it's but
And your payoff with kids does come later. I mean, with my daughter, I was the strict one, and I thought everybody was the fun and this and that. And my husband always says Disneyland dad, but she's like the exact same mom I am. She has the exact same work ethic, and I'm still the one that she feels the safest with.
yeah. And you're like, damn, you came out okay. I did a good job. I did all right. All right, so
But I also acknowledge now my faults as a mother. I think sometimes what I didn't do with my daughter was the warm and fuzzy. You know, I'm about like empowering you and stuff. So I'm definitely more warm and fuzzy with. I have grandkids now with
they get
them,
spoiled.
you know, and I am. I thought I wouldn't be strict, but I still am. I still don't take a lot of shit. You know, I don't negotiate with terrorists. That's definitely my
So it's your
parenting
life,
philosophy.
yeah. No, but I will say your grandkids when they're around, they're freaking fantastic. So let's talk here as we're getting kind of. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna flip this up a
Do
little
you
bit.
want to know how I met my dad still, or do I
Oh
need to
shit,
get
I
to that?
forgot.
Yeah.
Go back to that, please.
So anyways, I ended up in an adolescent treatment center. My dad was the person that ran it, and he took me under his wing, and he adopted me, and that's my father. And I got clean the first time when I was 19, and the second time when I was 21. I've been clean over half my life. I'm 44 now, and just did the work and still give back and do all that stuff.
Is it hard every day? Is it hard every week? Is it hard every month? Is it hard at all?
As using? No, because I really...
No, not using.
No, because once again, drugs were a symptom of the problem. There's no like there's a saying in the program that's like using's not an option. I've never believed that. I believe using's always an option. It's just not your first option anymore, right? So there has to be a major, and I've had major life issues, sicknesses, and all kinds of things that I think take a lot of addicts out. But I have the fundamentals and the tools, so it's not hard for me. We go to events all the time.
That's
All
what I was
realtors
gonna
do
say,
is drink. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like alcohol, all that
What
stuff.
was hard that I just finally barely stopped doing was smoking or eating instead when you're around all that stuff, and identifying that smoking and eating food was the same as using drugs. So having to learn that, switch that around. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, like I said, I've had moments in my life where I'm like, oh, I'm going down a path right now that if I keep going, I can end up somewhere I don't want to be.
Right.
So I think it also comes back to that little realization of like what kind of kept me off that path and how. Let's have a little fun.
Yeah.
Switch it up a little bit here. I like to do a little bit of like this or that.
Okay.
We'll do a little fun stuff. I've just thought of questions here.
Okay.
So let's start with, this is one I like to talk about. This is a new one that I want to talk about. FaceTime. Do you just like fucking call someone on FaceTime, or do you text them first and be like, yo, can you FaceTime?
Oh, if I want to FaceTime, I'm just FaceTime.
You just lead with the fucking FaceTime.
I lead with the FaceTime because
I'm
they're
like,
going to yes or no it.
So rude. Like my phone rings and it's just someone FaceTiming me, and I'm like,
No, they're going to yes or no it.
Text
They're going to yes or no it automatically. So when they ignore the call, that means they don't want to do it. If you text them, you give them a chance to think about it.
All right. So that's what. All right. Another one. Do you prefer the mountains or the beach?
Beach.
Yeah. Huh.
Oh yeah.
All the time.
All day, every day. I'm
Do
a
you get
mermaid.
to the beach in the bunch a lot?
Yeah, not as much as I used to, but I mean, I was a beach, Venice and Zuma Beach. That's where I grew up. With me and my friends, our nicknames are mermaids.
Got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't get to it enough, even though it's right down the street over
Yeah.
here. I don't get.
You mean across the street?
Yeah, I
you
mean
don't.
like right out my window across the street. Are you like a morning person or a night person?
Ugh, God. I was a night person for years, but like since my late 30s, I've definitely turned into a lame ass morning person.
What's morning for you?
Morning is like sleeping in is 8 o'clock now, where it used to be noon or 1.
That's a weekend. 8
Right,
o'clock.
weekend is 8 o'clock. Now I have that automatic clock where I fucking get up at like 6:45 or 7. It's so annoying. But I say that stupid shit now too. Like I feel like you can accomplish way more things.
Yeah, but you're in bed at 9:30.
Right,
So
right.
it's
You're
like,
falling asleep on the couch at 3 o'clock. Yeah, totally.
No, I hear you. I did the morning thing, and I will tell you the time adjustment has been a struggle for me.
Right.
Because I was like 5 o'clock every day.
Right.
And now it's like, a struggle to do the 5 o'clock again.
Right.
But yeah, I'm, now in bed at 10, 9:30, 10. So,
It feels good. Listen, I used to work on a lot of New York sales teams, so that means I had to be in the office at 6 because it's already fucking 9 o'clock in New York. And they weren't playing any games,
So the New York and me probably ask this question every time I talk to anybody: pizza or tacos?
Pizza.
Fuck yeah,
And
girl.
I'm from Southern California. Are you kidding me?
Dude, I think you're one of the first people to ever say pizza.
Yeah.
I literally
Good
had two
pizza.
What's your good pizza?
In Southern California, listen, I agree. New York has the best pizza. There's nothing over here. Just like Southern California has the best Mexican food. I've traveled all over the United States. You can't find it as good. Right now, my favorite pizza is Long Beach Beer Lab in Wrigley, part of Long Beach.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to write this thing right down. I mean, granted, Long Beach.
Their margarita pizza, forget it.
But I'm just like, give me a pepperoni.
I'm definitely a pepperoni person. I'm not like mad about Hawaiian pineapple. I don't get all psycho.
Come on,
about
man.
it.
Listen,
but
I'm
I'll
straight.
eat it. It's delicious.
No fucking fruit on my pizza. It's pepperoni. It's it. I had 2 slices of pizza today, and a Coke.
No, I'm a
healthy.
pepperoni or definitely cheese pizza person. I do
pig.
like a white pie. I feel like California does not have enough white pies. Like
I hate white
the
pies.
East Coast does.
I hate white pies.
My husband loves white pie because he's heartburn or whatever, the marinara sauce.
So what's next for Brandy?
Career-wise or just in
Whatever.
general?
You answer the question.
I would like to get my
next?
yoga teacher training. I always
Nice.
wanted to do that, and I could never afford it. Now
Do you
I
do
kind
yoga?
of can. I do.
How often?
Right now I've been doing it, 2 to 3 times a week.
When do you
fell
go?
off for a while. Whenever I can fit it in, seeing what class is available based on my work schedule, but I make it a priority. I would love to, vacationing is my priority. I
Solo
love
with
taking
your
the
husband
time.
or with the
with my
kids?
husband. I
Yeah.
love him.
I mean-
I love the
No,
fuck
you
out
do.
of
You
my husband.
do.
I'm one of those rare people, but it's because we've been through so much. That makes you or breaks you, you know?
So what I meant is, are you take like the grandkids or stuff like that? No, like you're talking about you
Those
and your
are
husband.
2 different kinds of
That's a trip.
vacations. Kids'
That's a trip.
vacations are working vacations. People are always like, when you go to Hawaii, why don't you take the kids? Fuck no.
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's a trip. That's not a vacation.
Yeah.
I haven't been on a vacation in a long time. I
Yeah.
take trips with my kids.
Right.
What? So yoga instructor certification, is that what you said?
Yeah,
That's rad.
it would be.
And then like doing that because you want to be able to teach, or just so you have the credentials?
Just the credentials and just the experience. I wouldn't mind teaching, though, too.
Yeah.
I would like to do it like in Bali or Costa Rica. They have took yoga teacher training programs there. I would love to do it in India, but it's funny, like the cost of the flights to India are as much as it
How
would
long
cost
is
to
the
do it
fucking
here.
program?
They're usually, it depends on where you go. Some of them are a couple weeks, some are a few months.
Well, you're just on you're now on sabbatical. If you're in Bali for a couple months doing a yoga certification,
I'll probably do raw
What-
yoga. Shout
what-
out to raw yoga, Costa Mesa, Long Beach, and Newport. That's my shit
What
right
was
now.
the movie with the yoga instructor that was like Polly like?
Are you thinking of, why do I want to say American Me? That's the Cholo movie.
I
I'm
can't
thinking
think
of, what's her face with Julia Roberts? Is that what you're
No.
talking about?
I was going back. I see the
What's
guy.
that movie though with Julia Roberts? And she goes to Bali, she goes to Italy and eats
Yeah,
pasta.
but she's also with isn't she with? She's married to Clooney in that movie, right? Is that what you're talking about?
No, that's the newer one.
That's the newer
where
one.
they go with their
I'm talking
daughter.
about the one that has
Eat, Pray, and Love. Thank you.
I'm thinking about the one that has the girl from Friends, and I think it had, or maybe Sarah Jessica Parker. I forget who it is, but it's the guy in the Speedo that's on the beach doing yoga.
You're thinking about, it's not the girl
It's
from
not
Friends.
you for Scuba Rubin.
It has Vince
Vince
Vaughn
Vaughn.
and everybody in it. That's hilarious. That's one of those movies I watch all the time. What is
I
that
can't think of the name.
called?
I can't think of it.
They're in
Forgetting
New
Sarah
York.
Marshall? I don't know.
Yeah. No, leave it to John. You're like my husband, John. You're mixing like 5 different movies into one right now.
That's all right. All right. Well, listen, I appreciate you being here, man.
Thanks
We're
for
gonna
having
continue
me.
the conversation another day. So.
All right.
And that was our episode of I Take That Personal podcast. I appreciate you guys tuning in, and we'll see you next time.